Despite rising above challenges and achieving countless successes behind the spotlight, he still carries deep wounds from the past. Famous, wealthy, and beloved worldwide, it is precisely these accomplishments that highlight the shadows he cannot escape. Keith Urban not only struggles with the pressures of fame, but also faces inner storms that no one sees, feelings of loss, loneliness, and unspoken pain. The path he has traveled is not just a journey of music, but also a story of survival, rising from the depths, and the relentless struggle to find peace in a world filled with temptations and pain. If you feel that this story moves you and resonates with you, please leave a 1 in the comments. If not, feel free to share your thoughts with a 0. Let's discuss Keith's resilient journey and the lessons from his life together. And don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel and follow more inspiring videos. Keith Urban was not born into music. He was born into chaos. In Whangarei, New Zealand, his childhood began peacefully until his family moved to Caboolture, Australia, in search of new opportunities. But instead of a bright future, they faced a series of challenging days. The first tragedy struck when Keith was only 9 years old. His childhood home burned down on a fateful night. Every memory, clothes, toys, family photos vanished with the flames. It was not just a material loss, but also a deep cut in his tender soul. Since the fire, Keith has learned to survive not only physically, but also emotionally. This loss has left a void that is hard to fill. But that fire was just the beginning. Keith grew up in a home where love was always absent. His father, Robert Urban, was the one who placed the first guitar in Keith's hands, but he was also the one who filled his childhood with fear. Keith once shared that throughout his life, he never heard his father say, "I love you." The emotional void in the family led Keith to turn to music as a form of self-saving. While other children played outside, Keith learned to listen to the emotions of others, learned to be silent, learned to make himself invisible. The guitar became a refuge. By the age of 6, he viewed it as a part of his body, like an invisible armor. Music was no longer a hobby. It was a means of healing. When he was just 8 years old, Keith performed at bars. Not for money, not for fame, but to feel alive. One of the rare bright spots in his childhood was his local music teacher, Sue McCarthy. She not only taught him his first chords, but was also the first to give him a sense of recognition. When he couldn't find warmth at home, his lessons with her felt like a safe haven. There, Keith experienced for the first time what his father had never given him: support. Despite the audience's applause, Keith still felt lonely behind the scenes. The difference between the external glamour and the internal emptiness seemed to grow larger each day. Since he was young, he had learned to smile even when his heart was bleeding. Suffering had never left him. He just became better at hiding it over time. Keith did not dream of fame. He dreamed of peace. Each song he played was an effort to fill the void in his heart. At the age of 24, Keith left Australia for Nashville, the capital of country music. With only a guitar and a dream in hand, he found that Nashville was not welcoming. Record labels ignored him. Producers turned him down. He performed in small venues, sometimes without pay, just to have a chance to be heard. The coldness of the American music industry nearly brought Keith to his knees. He had lived with the mindset of someone who was not expected, and now, even after leaving the past behind, that feeling still clung to him. Keith Urban lived in a rundown apartment without air conditioning during the sweltering summer in Nashville. Meals to get by became a constant worry. He scraped by with every penny, trying to hold on to his dream in a city that hardly cared. But the night was when the real challenge began. It was a time of silence where he faced the echoes of doubt alone, wondering if life had chosen the wrong dream or if he himself was not strong enough to pursue it to the end. The invisible feeling of helplessness and exhaustion surrounded Keith every day. But somewhere deep inside, something still wouldn't allow him to give up. Music was no longer a youthful dream. It had become a source of life, an inseparable part of him. No matter how many times he fell, he couldn't let go of the guitar. To make a living, Keith began writing music for others. A few songs unexpectedly became hits playing on radio stations everywhere, but his name remained in the shadows. He formed the band The Ranch, and although the group had some success, the spotlight was always just out of reach. The relentless effort and pressure gradually wore down Keith's spirit. By the late 1990s, after a surgery to remove a polyp from his vocal cords, he was prescribed painkillers. However, the recovery process opened a new door, a door leading into darkness. From using the medication as prescribed, Keith slowly slipped into a cycle of dependency. Everything happened quietly. He still appeared with a constant smile, still performed, still answered interviews as if nothing was wrong. But behind the scenes was a person falling apart. Friends noticed the change. In Keith's eyes, the fire was no longer there as it once was. The smile he used to have is now just a mask, trying to maintain the image of an artist. He is sinking deeper into depression, exhausted, and silent. There are nights when he sits in his small apartment, staring blankly at the still ceiling fan, tears falling silently. Music, which used to be a refuge, now feels like an unbearable burden. The passion has become a curse. And Keith has thought about giving up not just his career, but everything. In 1998, everything hit rock bottom. A severe drug overdose nearly cost Keith his life. It was no longer a nightmare, it was reality. On the brink of life and death, Keith was forced to confront himself, the buried pain, the years of repression, all that he had lost. Nashville was not just a place to test talent. It was like a mirror exposing all the unhealed wounds. If he hadn't survived that day, Keith Urban's story would have ended before it even began. But fate did not close the door. In a strange way, amidst the darkest moment of his life, Keith found a glimmer of hope, fragile yet enough to pull him back. He began the journey of climbing up from the abyss. Slowly, painfully, one step at a time. No noise, no declarations, no seeking pity from anyone. He did not speak much about what had happened. Even his loyal fans were unaware of how bad things had truly been. However, since that incident, Keith understood that pursuing a dream with a broken heart is a path fraught with danger. The pain does not simply disappear, but facing it helps him live more authentically. He knew he had to choose to continue breaking apart or to heal himself and move on. By the end of the 1990s, Keith Urban was not yet a star. He had not yet had a global hit or won any major awards. But what mattered was he had survived. And that was the foundation for all the glory that would come later. But something inside him had changed. The pain, the pills, and the rejection had not defeated him yet. Nashville had tried, but Keith Urban still wouldn't give up. It wasn't even enough. The fame made everything worse. But Keith Urban finally broke through in 1999. After many years of failure and insecurity, his song, "But for the Grace of God," climbed to #1 on the American country charts. It should have been the beginning of peace, but the reality was quite the opposite. Fame cannot heal wounds. It only makes hiding them easier. He smiles in front of the camera lens but silently crumbles behind the scenes. By 2002, Somebody Like You had turned him into a country music superstar. It became one of the biggest hits of the decade, played on the radio in stadiums and at award shows. But Keith was collapsing faster than ever. His anxiety addiction and panic attacks did not disappear. They continued to follow him on the red carpet and in his private jet. The world witnesses a rising icon, yet he still feels like someone struggling to get back up. Behind the Grammy Awards, CMA, and global tours is a man surrounded by fear. Keith admits he feels like a fraud even while accepting awards on live television. Few know he hides panic attacks right before performances. There are times he can't breathe backstage, trembling as he tries to smile at fans. The pressure of perfection gradually erodes the remaining joy within him. If Keith's story resonates with you, don't forget to share this video with those you think will be inspired. Each of us has our own story, our own struggles, and sometimes sharing is the way to help each other heal. Let the music and sincere moments of Keith convey the message of survival, change, and love. Together we can spread positive values and rise above the challenges in life. One of the darkest moments was during a tour when he suddenly stepped off the bus and disappeared. For nearly 24 hours he was missing with no calls and no explanations. He wandered into a nearby city and drank alone until he passed out. It was a turning point that he kept silent about, buried beneath the shell of fame. Very few people knew this had happened. Amid that chaos, Nicole Kidman entered his life in 2005. Their relationship initially seemed like a miracle. A Hollywood star and a country music legend are in love, but the demons within Keith never cease. Fame has fueled his addictions, and even Nicole's presence cannot stop the downward spiral. He still carries the wounds from many years, and their relationship becomes strained after the accident. Just 4 months after their wedding in June 2006, Keith had to enter rehab again. That moment shocked fans. But for Keith, it was a matter of survival. He hit another wall: too much alcohol, too many drugs, too many secrets. But this time, someone stayed. Nicole didn't leave. She was steadfast while the man she married fell apart. The rehab trip in October 2006 was a turning point, not only because of the treatment process, but also because of how Nicole handled it. She didn't blame or shame him. Instead, she stood by him during his toughest times. That support became a solid foundation that Keith had never had before. For the first time, he was no longer alone in the fight. Even after treatment, the road remained bumpy. Fame still brought temptations, and trust needed to be rebuilt. But Nicole's presence had become a quiet strength in his life. She was the first to see both the talent and the pain, and she stayed. That stability helped Keith confront the parts of himself he had always avoided. Many believe that success will solve everything, but Keith Urban is proof of that. At the peak of fame, he struggled to survive. He had awards money and reputation, but nothing filled that void. The panic attacks didn't care about his ranking. The addiction didn't ease with the applause. Fame gave him the opportunity to achieve everything he had ever dreamed of. But it also provided him with more ways to escape, more ways to run away, and more pressure to pretend that he was okay. That burden nearly crushed him. He learned that pain doesn't disappear just because the world calls you a star. And for Keith, those early years of success were the darkest years. There is something haunting about someone who has finally succeeded only to realize they are still in pain. Keith Urban has lived in that reality. He has achieved every milestone, but still feels empty. The outside world has witnessed a legend being born, but inside he is still the broken Australian boy searching for peace in the storm of applause. He almost lost everything, but found salvation in a place where most people fear absolute darkness. Love has recreated him. It took some time for Keith Urban to get better. He was not saved by fame, but love gave him a reason to try again. Nicole Kidman did not save him. She helped him stand up. Keith feels at peace in a way he has never felt before because she is always by his side. Not because of love, but because he needed safety, something he never had as a child. Keith changed in some ways when Sunday Rose was born in 2008. He had to confront his broken past while holding his daughter in his arms. The father he never had was always there, kind and sincere. 2 years later, Faith Margaret was born through surrogacy, and Keith took this new life even further. Becoming a father made him realize how far he had come and how much further he still had to go. Staying sober is not easy, but I can choose to do it. Keith keeps himself clean by creating habits that help him connect with the real world. He welcomes each new year with gratitude instead of praise. He relies on therapy, writes in a journal, and has long conversations with himself when he is not in front of the camera. He doesn't just stop drinking. Every day, he chooses peace. Keith journals every morning when he is alone in the yard. It is something he does to calm himself before the world becomes noisy. He thinks about the life he has been running away from and what might have happened if he hadn't agreed to help. He is not running away in the photo, sitting with a pen under the dawn light. His attention is on himself, on the silence, and on the life he has built piece by piece. As Keith recovers, his music does too. The loud party songs give way to deeper lyrics and more profound melodies. Albums like Ripcord Graffiti U and High in 2024 do not chase hits. Instead, they explore the truth. He gave up his job writing music for the radio and started writing to understand who he was becoming. You can feel the growth in every note, raw, uncertain, but sincere. His performances have also changed. They are less showy and more present. He connects with fans not through perfection, but through shared struggles. He often uses interviews to speak openly about addiction and mental health. His singing voice, especially for young men under pressure to hide their pain, brings something genuine. Keith still lives in the spotlight, but now his favorite moments are vastly different. Family dinners where everyone walks barefoot and relaxes. Early morning walks with Nicole before the whole world wakes up. Playing guitar on the porch while the kids run around on the lawn. These stories may not be grand, but for someone like Keith, they are proof of his survival. The man who once disappeared during tours to drink alone now spends quiet Sunday mornings assembling Lego with his daughters. The same man who once felt like a fraud under the bright stage lights has now accepted the truth without shame. He no longer needs to numb the pain or seek approval. He simply shows up fully present. Keith doesn't talk endlessly about the recovery process. He lives each day, each moment to the fullest. Every day of being awake is a silent victory, not flaunted to the world, but incredibly meaningful. This version of Keith Urban is not louder or more glamorous than before. He is calmer, more realistic, more humane, and above all, he has never been more refined, proving that the healing process, though quiet, is powerful. Keith does not try to pretend that the past never happened, but he also does not let it define who he is. The sadness, the darkness, the looming collapse, they are part of the story, but not the ending. According to his doctor and family members, Ozzy had a significant moment in his final days as he faced death and found peace within himself. His revelations about his feelings and decisions during this period were not just confessions, but also sent a profound message about love, forgiveness, and how to face life. In the final months of his life, Ozzy began to reflect on his life, the choices and mistakes he never admitted to, from his tumultuous career to his struggles with addiction and illness. He prefers quiet places over crowded ones, whether it's Sydney, Nashville, or New York. He doesn't have many opportunities to shine, but when he does, he makes a point to do so. Keith still plays music, but not all the time. The endless, long trips of his youth are behind him. He enjoys staying home with his daughters in the evening and having coffee with Nicole in the morning. The cheers of the crowd are not as important as connecting with one person in the crowd. He sings not to show off, but to connect with people. He helps new artists by offering advice based on knowledge, not ego. He quietly donates money to children's hospitals and rehabilitation centers, causes he is very passionate about. In 2025, Keith's childhood trauma sparked a fan-initiated campaign. This campaign collected over 1,200 stuffed animals for children in hospitals. Keith included a handwritten note with each gift. It wasn't a publicity stunt, but an act of healing. He started painting again and used it as a way to relax. Each painting reflects the emotions he once drowned in alcohol. Now he meditates every day. No alcohol or drugs, just the air, music, and space to reflect. His life is now orderly and kind. "Peace is even louder than applause," is a phrase Keith often shares with friends and fans. At the age of 57, Keith Urban's tragedy is even more heartbreaking than the pain he has endured, but it is from those challenges that he has found the strength to change and rediscover himself. Behind every stage light, Keith is not just a music legend, but also a man struggling with the darkness within his soul. His battles with addiction, panic attacks, and loneliness have not defeated him. Rather, they have become the foundation for a stronger resurgence than ever before. He has found peace in the simplest moments, mornings, with family quiet evenings playing guitar, and candid conversations about the difficulties he faces. Keith Urban has proven that despite the many injustices and sorrows in life, it is only when we confront our past and are willing to change that we can truly live fully. What he has today is not the dazzling success of a star, but the growth of a man who once stood on the brink of collapse and is now shining from within. Keith's strength does not lie in his fame or the awards he has received, but in his ability to face himself, embrace old wounds, and create a new life, one that is more meaningful and complete. If Keith's story has touched your heart, don't forget to like and share this video to spread the message of resilience and hope. Every story, every share can be a great source of encouragement for those facing difficulties. Let us create a community where love, empathy, and the power of change are nurtured and developed. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss inspiring stories and amazing journeys of survival and growth. Let the music and personal experiences like Keith's inspire you. Every like, every share is a small action, but it can make a big difference in someone's life. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Together we can make the world a better place.